Breaking news. Sunday, April 26th, 2026. On March 24th, a Russian military satellite photographed Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia, one of the largest American military installations in the Middle East, capturing high-resolution imagery of the specific layout, aircraft positions, and infrastructure of the base. 3 days later, on March 27th, Iranian forces struck Prince Sultan Air Base and destroyed a United States Air Force Boeing E-3 Sentry airborne warning and control system aircraft, the most sophisticated airborne radar and command platform in America's entire regional air defense architecture. The day after the strike, on March 28th, the same Russian satellite returned and passed over Prince Sultan to conduct post-strike damage assessment, confirming what Iran's weapons had destroyed. This sequence, confirmed by Ukrainian intelligence assessment reviewed by Reuters and by a regional security source who verified the specific incident, is not circumstantial evidence of Russian support for Iran's targeting operations. It is the operational proof of concept of the Doomsday Shield that Vladimir Putin has handed Tehran. And it did not stop with one satellite pass over one airbase. Russian satellites conducted at least 24 imagery surveys of areas in 11 Middle Eastern countries in the 10-day period from March 21st to 31st alone, covering 46 military objects, including Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, Kuwait International Airport, Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, Incirlik Air Base in Turkey, and Sheba oil and gas field in Saudi Arabia. Every major American military installation in the region has been photographed for Iranian use. The Doomsday Shield is active, and Washington is terrified to strike. Stay right here. Because what mainstream media is telling you about this conflict is that it is a war between America and Iran. Two parties, one powerful, one desperate. And eventually the desperate one surrenders. That is the story mainstream media has been selling since February 28th. What mainstream media is not telling you is that this is not a war between America and Iran. It is a war between America and the strategic architecture that Russia and China have been building around Iran for 4 years. The weapons are Iranian, the satellites are Russian, the navigation is Chinese, the electronic warfare lessons come from Ukraine. The targeting intelligence flows through Russian military spies stationed in Tehran through a permanent communications channel between Moscow and Tehran. The Doomsday Shield that Washington is terrified to strike through is not Iranian technology. It is the combined technological infrastructure of two permanent members of the United Nations Security Council with nuclear arsenals, applied to the defense of a third country that sits on top of 20% of the world's oil supply. Mainstream media is giving you the Iran story. I am giving you the Russia story inside the Iran story, the one that makes Washington's hesitation make complete sense. And in this video, recorded on Sunday, April 26th, 2026, I'm going to give you every component of that Doomsday Shield in the specific detail that explains why the most powerful military in human history is currently in a ceasefire. It extended at Pakistan's request, rather than bombing a country whose conventional navy has been sunk and whose supreme leader has been assassinated. This is what mainstream media is not telling you. The Washington Post confirmed on March 6th that Russia is giving Iran intelligence to target United States forces, and that the targeting information has included the locations of American warships and aircraft in the Middle East. CNN reported on March 11th that Russia is giving Iran specific advice on drone tactics. British Defense Secretary John Healey said on March 12th that Putin's hidden hand is likely behind some of the Iranian tactics, and potentially some of their capabilities. The Foundation for Defensive Democracies published its April 21st analysis, confirming that Russia has been sharing sensitive military know-how with Iran for years, and specifically that Moscow has been sharing its experience countering American-made weaponry, including Patriot missiles and ATAC-MS. The Russia Matters Analytical Digest, drawing on foreign affairs research, confirmed that Russia has been watching the United States reveal its operational playbook, munitions depletion rate, and thin Allied participation in the Iran war, all of which China and Russia's military planners are documenting as the most detailed open-source intelligence on American warfighting limitations that has been produced since the Cold War ended. And the retired United States Air Force Lieutenant General Richard Newton told Fox News that the latest reports that Russia provided essential imaging intelligence to the Iranian regime to target a United States airbase in Saudi Arabia should surprise no one, that Putin is an adversary who cannot be trusted, and that there must be consequences for Russia aiding and abetting the Iranian regime. There have been no consequences for Russia aiding and abetting the Iranian regime, and I am going to explain exactly why. Let us start with what Putin actually handed Iran, and build the Doomsday Shield layer by layer, because the shield is not a single weapon. It is an integrated architecture, and its integration is what makes it genuinely terrifying to the American military planners who have to operate through it every single day of this extended ceasefire. The first layer is the S400 Triumph. Russia delivered 4 complete S400 battalions to Iran during the conflict period. Each battalion consists of 8 launch vehicles, each carrying 4 missiles in ready-to-fire configuration. The total ready-to-fire capacity is 128 missiles across the 4 battalions, with a full reload capacity of 384 missiles in the complete delivery. The S400 can engage targets at ranges up to 400 kilometers and at altitudes up to 30 kilometers. It can track up to 100 targets simultaneously and engage up to 12 simultaneously. Its missiles travel at speeds between Mach 4.8 and Mach 14, depending on the variant. The system is mobile. The launch vehicles are truck-mounted and can deploy from road march to fire-ready in 5 minutes. The mobility is critical because it means American satellite surveillance cannot produce a static targeting solution. The launchers move. The American targeting cycle of finding, fixing, tracking, and attacking a mobile launcher requires the launcher to be visible during the strike execution window, which Russian operational doctrine specifically designs around minimizing. NATO spent a decade trying to understand how to penetrate S400 coverage. Every American ally that attempted to purchase the system was warned against it, not because the technology would not work, but because operating it would expose the system's operational parameters to Russian technicians whose access would compromise NATO's ability to plan around it. Turkey was sanctioned for buying it. India was threatened with sanctions for buying it. The specific anti-stealth capability that the S-400's associated Nebo-M radar provides is the element that changes the air campaign calculation most fundamentally. The Nebo-M operates on VHF band frequencies whose longer wavelength reduces the effectiveness of the stealth shaping applied to the F-35C and F-22 Raptor airframes. At VHF frequencies, the stealth coatings and angular designs that make these aircraft nearly invisible to X-band and S-band fire control radars provide less reduction in radar cross-section. The Nebo-M can detect stealth aircraft at ranges up to 600 kilometers. 600 kilometers. The F-35C that flew into Iranian airspace on February 28th in the opening strikes of Operation Epic Fury flew with no functioning Nebo-M radar network in Iran. The F-35C that would fly into Iranian airspace in any resumed second round of bombing would fly with a Nebo-M network that detects it at 600 kilometers before it reaches the Iranian border and cues the S-400's fire control radar to the approximate position of the approaching aircraft, dramatically increasing the probability of a successful engagement against a platform that American air campaign doctrine has relied upon being effectively invisible to Iranian radar. The second layer is the Iscander-M. 24 Iscander-M launchers were in Russia's weapons delivery to Iran during the ceasefire period. Each launcher carries 2 missiles in ready-to-fire configuration, giving a total first salvo capacity of 48 missiles with immediate reload capability from accompanying transport launch vehicles. The Iscander-M carries a warhead weighing between 400 and 700 kilograms. Its range is between 375 and 500 kilometers, depending on the configuration. It travels at speeds between Mach 5 and Mach 7 in terminal phase. It's circular error probable. The military's measurement of accuracy, defined as the radius within which half of all shots will land, is between 2 and 7 meters. It is accurate enough to destroy an individual aircraft shelter, a hardened command center bunker, or a specific building within a larger military facility. F-35. C's combat radius is approximately 1,090 kilometers. Moving the carrier 800 kilometers further from Iran means the Super Hornet, which carries the bulk of any carrier strike group's conventional strike payload, is now operating at or beyond the edge of its effective combat radius for many Iranian target sets. The F-35C can still reach Iran, but with reduced time on target, reduced weapons capacity per sortie due to the fuel required for the longer transit, and increased vulnerability during the longer return leg over Iranian-monitored airspace. The critical operational characteristic of the Iscander-M that makes it the most alarming element of the Doomsday Shield is its terminal phase flight profile. The Iscander does not follow a predictable ballistic trajectory in its final approach to the target. It maneuvers. It changes direction in ways that the Patriot missile defense system's fire control radar must track and update its intercept solution for in real time. The Patriot was designed for ballistic missiles, following predictable Newtonian arcs, whose intercept geometry can be computed from the initial trajectory data. Against a missile that maneuvers at Mach 7 in terminal phase while simultaneously deploying decoys that dilute the Patriot battery's engagement capacity, the Patriot's intercept success rate is dramatically lower than its performance against conventional ballistic missiles. No American defensive system has ever demonstrated reliable operational interception of a maneuvering quasi-ballistic weapon of the Iscander class in an actual combat engagement. The system has been used in Ukraine extensively. NATO air defense teams have studied every recorded engagement. The Patriot has never demonstrated reliable interception of it in operational conditions. Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the largest American military installation in the Middle East, is approximately 400 kilometers from Iran's border, within the Iskander's 500-kilometer range. Camp Arifjan in Kuwait is approximately 500 kilometers from Iranian territory. within range. Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia, the facility that Russia photographed and that Iran struck on March 27th, is approximately 700 kilometers from Iran's border and potentially reachable by extended-range Iscander variants or by the Zulfiqar ballistic missiles in Iran's own arsenal. Every American base, every aircraft parked on every flight line, every fuel depot, every command center, every ammunition storage facility, every radar installation that supports American air operations in the Gulf region is now within the Iskander's engagement envelope. The American military's response is not to move the bases. It is to manage the threat through the missile defense system whose limitations against the Iskander are not classified. They are openly acknowledged by every missile defense analyst who has studied the system's operational record. The VT Foreign Policy Analysis published March 15th, which compiled and synthesized the most detailed assessment of the Russian weapons package's impact on American operational posture, stated that American carriers have retreated approximately 800 kilometers from their previous operating positions since the full extent of the weapons delivery became operationally confirmed. 800 kilometers. The USS Abraham Lincoln and USS Gerald R. Ford carrier strike groups, whose air wings were conducting strikes from positions that placed their aircraft within standard combat radius of Iranian targets, have moved to positions whose greater distance from Iran reduces the effectiveness of the S400, Iscander, and Bastion-P systems against them. The retreat is not a strategic withdrawal. It is a tactical adjustment to the changed threat environment that the Russian weapons delivery produced. And it has a consequence for American offensive capability. The FA-18E Super Hornet's combat radius is approximately 720 kilometers with a standard weapons load. The third layer is the Bastion-P coastal anti-ship system. 8 Bastion-P launchers were delivered, each carrying 8 P-800 Onyx missiles in ready configuration for a total of 64 anti-ship missiles in first salvo. The Onyx, known to NATO as SSN-26 Strobel, travels at speeds between Mach 2 and Mach 2.6 in terminal phase while descending to sea skimming altitude of 5 to 7 meters above the water surface. It has a range of approximately 300 kilometers. Its 750-kilogram warhead is designed to penetrate the hull of a surface warship and detonate inside the vessel's critical spaces rather than on the exterior plating. The terminal approach at 5 to 7 meters above sea level is specifically designed to exploit the geometric constraint of shipborne radar systems, which have difficulty tracking targets at very low altitude above the sea surface, because the radar return from the waves themselves creates clutter that degrades the target track quality needed for a successful intercept. The Aegis combat system on American destroyers and cruisers is the most capable naval air defense system in the world. Against an Onyx traveling at Mach 2.6 at 5 meters above the water, Aegis has reduced intercept time measured in seconds, reduced radar track quality due to sea surface clutter at that altitude, and the specific engagement geometry problem of a missile approaching from a position where the ship's own hull masks some portion of the radar coverage arc. 8 Bastion-P systems with 64 Onyx missiles can execute a saturation attack against American carrier strike groups operating in the Persian Gulf or Arabian Sea that would place multiple simultaneously approaching missiles against each ship's Aegis defensive capacity simultaneously. And saturation is the Onyx's design defeat mechanism against Aegis, because Aegis can only simultaneously engage a limited number of incoming threats before the engagement queue exceeds available interceptor capacity. The fourth layer is the Verba MANPADS. The 500-unit, €589 million contract between Iran and Russia's Rosoboron export, signed in Moscow in December 2025 and disclosed by the Financial Times on February 22, 2026, 4 days before the war began, provides Iran with 500 9K333 Verba shoulder-fired air defense launchers and 2,500 9M336 missiles. The Verba is specifically designed as an improvement over previous MANPADS generations in its ability to discriminate between aircraft infrared signatures and decoy flares. Its 3-channel passive optical seeker operates in ultraviolet, near-infrared, and mid-infrared spectral ranges simultaneously. The cross-verification of target signatures across 3 spectral channels is what allows the Verba to distinguish a genuine aircraft heat signature from a flare deployed to distract an older single-channel MANPADS. Previous American combat aircraft employed flare dispensers as the primary defense against MANPADS threats, and those flares reliably defeated the older MANPADS designs that Iranian forces used in previous conflicts. Against a Verba with 3-channel discrimination, the flare countermeasure is significantly less reliable because the Verba's seeker can verify which heat source in its field of view matches the full 3-channel spectral signature of an aircraft, rather than being confused by a single flare. 500 Verba launchers, distributed across the dispersed IRGC and regular Iranian military command structure, means that every low-altitude mission, every helicopter operation, every close air support sortie, every special operations extraction flight like the April 5th mission that deployed 155 aircraft and more than 100 Delta Force operators to recover a downed F-15E pilot 400 kilometers inside Iran, now operates in airspace, where shoulder-fired missiles with improved flare resistance are positioned. The Verba's engagement ceiling is 4,500 meters. Below that ceiling, every aircraft conducting low-altitude operations is potentially engaged by a system that a single soldier can carry, conceal, position without any radar or electronic emission that American surveillance can detect, aim using a passive optical tracker that emits no signal, and fire with a reaction time of under 8 seconds. 500 of those soldiers distributed across Iran's territory create a threat environment for low-altitude operations that no electronic warfare system can suppress because the Verba emits nothing detectable before it fires. The fifth layer is the intelligence architecture. This is the element of the Doomsday Shield that makes every other component exponentially more lethal, because weapons that do not know where to point are hardware without operational value. Russia's intelligence contribution to Iran's targeting operations has been confirmed at multiple levels of detail by multiple independent sources. The Washington Post's March 6th report confirmed that Russia is giving Iran targeting intelligence, including the locations of American warships and aircraft. The Ukrainian intelligence assessment, reviewed by Reuters on April 7th, confirmed that Russian satellites made at least 24 imagery surveys of 46 objects in 11 Middle Eastern countries in the 10-day period from March 21st to 31st. Zelensky confirmed and disclosed the specific incident of Prince Sultan Air Base being photographed on March 24th and then struck on March 27th, with a Russian satellite returning on March 28th to assess damage. Fox News' report on retired Lieutenant General Newton confirmed that the satellite imagery was used to target the AWACS strike specifically. The Ukrainian assessment said the exchange of satellite imagery was being organized through a permanent communications channel used by Russia and Iran and could also be facilitated by Russian military spies stationed in Tehran. This is not occasional sharing of general intelligence about American capabilities. This is a dedicated, ongoing, institutionally structured intelligence partnership with permanent communications, infrastructure, and Russian personnel physically present in Iran's capital to facilitate the flow of targeting data from Russian satellite sensors to Iranian strike planning teams. The Russian government denied it. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov told a March 27th press conference that Moscow is not providing intelligence to Iran. Steve Witkoff, Trump's special envoy, told reporters the Russians said they have not been sharing, and we can take them at their word. The satellite that flew over Prince Sultan on March 24th and the AWACS that was destroyed on March 27th are the specific operational evidence against that word. The sixth layer is the electronic warfare and tactical knowledge transfer. The Foundation for Defense of Democracy's analysis confirmed that Russia has been sharing its experience from Ukraine, including specifically its lessons in countering American-made weaponry, including Patriot missiles and ATAC-MS. Andrea Kendall-Taylor told Russia Matters that the lessons learned have been happening throughout the course of the war in Ukraine, but the implications now are here, as Moscow can share its experience specifically about countering the weapon systems that have been used against both Russia and Ukraine and against Iran in the current war. Russia has expended more resources fighting against Patriot systems in Ukraine than any other country in the world. Russia knows the Patriot system's engagement geometry, its radar modes, its interceptor trajectory profiles, and its specific operational limitations, in ways that no other military has been able to study in active combat conditions at scale. Sharing that specific knowledge with Iranian air defense crews who are operating Patriot-compatible threat environments against American aircraft is not a theoretical advantage. It is operational expertise derived from the most expensive real-world combat testing program in the history of surface-to-air missile warfare, transferred to the adversary that is operating against the same weapons in the same war. The Russia Matters Analytical Digest of March 9th through 16th synthesized the most comprehensive available analysis of what Russia gains from the Iran war and why Putin is in no hurry to either save Iran or to stop helping it. 3 separate analyses published in Foreign Affairs, The Economist, and Axios within a single week in March all reached the same conclusion. Russia benefits from the Iran war's continuation. If the conflict causes significant and lasting damage to the Gulf's energy infrastructure, Russian oil and gas becomes indispensable. Trump suspended sanctions on Russian oil during the war, providing Russia an immediate economic windfall. The Economist published Vladimir Putin enjoys a huge windfall from the Iran war. The New York Times published suspended United States sanctions add a political win to Russia's economic gains. Russia's oil revenue increased as oil prices surged. Russia's Shadow Fleet tankers, some of whose operational structure overlaps with the Iranian Shadow Fleet, moved more oil at higher prices. And Russia is watching the United States reveal its operational playbook its munitions depletion rates, its allied participation limits, and its strategic hesitation when confronted with an integrated, multi-layer threat environment, all of which feeds directly into Russia's planning for any future European or Pacific contingency. The specific sentence from the Russia Matters Digest that summarizes Russia's calculation most precisely came from the Foreign Affairs analysis by Alexander Gabuev, Nikol Graevsky, and Sergei Vakalenko. They noted that securing Iran's 450 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium, convertible to weapons grade within weeks and enough for more than 10 nuclear bombs, is one of the United States and Israel's key war objectives, and that, in theory, Putin's offer could help facilitate the removal of Iran's nuclear stockpile without American or Israeli boots on the ground. Putin made that offer as a potential intermediary for Iran's uranium. Trump told Fox News Radio, "We are not focused on that, but at some point we might be." Russia is positioning itself as the party that can facilitate the nuclear resolution that the entire conflict is actually about, which would give Russia a central diplomatic role in the outcome of a war it has been covertly fueling from both sides. This is the specific strategic genius of Putin's Doomsday Shield contribution. He is providing weapons and intelligence that make the conflict harder for the United States to win militarily, while simultaneously positioning Russia as the diplomatic broker whose cooperation is necessary for the United States to achieve its primary objective, the extraction of Iran's nuclear stockpile without a ground invasion. The Russian-Iranian Comprehensive Strategic Partnership that Putin and Pezeshkian signed in January 2025 is the legal framework within which all of this cooperation occurs. The treaty does not include a mutual defense clause, which is the specific technical distinction Russia uses to deny that it is defending Iran. Russia has not sent troops to fight in Iran. Russia has not directly attacked American forces. Russia is providing weapons, intelligence, electronic warfare expertise, satellite reconnaissance, cyber support through shared hacking infrastructure, and diplomatic cover through the Permanent Security Council veto that prevents any United Nations action against either Russia or Iran in the context of this conflict. Within those parameters, the partnership is delivering everything that makes the Doomsday Shield function. The weapons came on 27 cargo aircraft over 14 days of continuous airlift from 3 Russian military airfields. The intelligence flows through a permanent communications channel organized by Russian military spies in Tehran. The electronic warfare lessons flow from 4 years of combat testing against American systems in Ukraine. And the diplomatic cover is provided in every Security Council session, where China and Russia together ensure that no resolution against Iran can pass. The CSIS munitions analysis, published April 22nd, documented the specific American constraint that the Doomsday Shield's existence is forcing Washington to manage. At least 45% of precision strike missiles expended, at least 50% of THAAD interceptors expended, nearly 50% of Patriot air defense interceptors expended, approximately 30% of Tomahawk cruise missiles fired, 3 to 4 years to rebuild those stocks at current production capacity. The American military is not out of weapons for the Iran fight, but the number of critical munitions remaining is no longer sufficient to simultaneously prosecute a second round of Iran bombing and maintain the deterrence posture against China in the Western Pacific and against Russia in Eastern Europe that American defense planning requires. The Iran war did not just deplete the weapons used against Iran. It depleted the weapons whose primary strategic function in American planning was deterring the adversaries who are operating the Doomsday Shield that is making the Iran war harder to win. Putin congratulated the new Iranian Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei after his father's assassination on February 28th and vowed to remain a reliable partner of the Islamic Republic. Iran's ambassador to Moscow, Kazem Jalali, said in January that Russian-Iranian ties in the military and security spheres are also expanding, and that it is inappropriate to discuss the details. The comprehensive strategic partnership signed in January was described by both governments as a key element of regional and global security. The weapons deliveries, the satellite intelligence, the cyber cooperation, the electronic warfare expertise, the diplomatic cover, the Russian military spies in Tehran, and Putin's personal vow to remain a reliable partner are not the background context of this conflict. They are the primary variable that explains why the most powerful military in human history is extending ceasefires at Pakistani army chiefs' requests, rather than bombing a country whose conventional navy has been sunk. Washington is terrified to strike not because of Iran. Washington is terrified to strike because of what Russia has given Iran to receive the strike with. The Nebo-M radar that detects stealth aircraft at 600 kilometers. The S400 that engages targets at 400 kilometers with missiles that travel at Mach 14. The Iscander M that hits American bases at 500 kilometers with a maneuvering warhead that Patriot has never reliably intercepted in operational conditions. The Bastion-P that fires Onyx missiles at Mach 2.6 at 5 meters above sea level against the carrier task groups. The 500 Verba MANPADS that make low-altitude operations dangerous for every helicopter and close air support aircraft in the theater. The Russian satellite network that photographs American bases before Iranian missiles strike them and returns the day after to assess the damage. The Russian military spies in Tehran who run the permanent communications channel that routes the targeting data from the satellites to the Iranian strike planners. The Russian hackers collaborating with Iranian hackers using Russian infrastructure against American digital systems. The specific Patriot defeat expertise derived from 4 years of combat against the system in Ukraine transferred to the people who are operating against the same system in the Gulf. Trump told Fox News Radio that Russia might be helping Iran a little bit. The destroyed AWACS at Prince Sultan Air Base, photographed by a Russian satellite 3 days before it was struck and the day after to assess the damage, is the specific operational measurement of a little bit. The Doomsday Shield is not the Iran War's context. It is the Iran War's architecture. And on Sunday, April 26th, 2026, the indefinitely extended ceasefire that Pakistan brokered at 1 in the morning is the specific American military institution's acknowledgement that striking through the Doomsday Shield in the second round carries costs that the first round, before the shield was completed, did not carry. The Pentagon directive said it in 7 words. Assume all offensive operations are now contested. That directive was not issued because Iran rebuilt its conventional navy. Iran's conventional navy is at the bottom of the sea. The directive was issued because Putin handed Tehran the thing that the Iranian navy never was and never could have been built, as a Doomsday Shield that Russia spent 40 years engineering, 4 years testing against American weapons in Ukraine, and the past 58 days of this conflict delivering, positioning, and activating in the specific geographic and electronic environment where American military power must now operate to achieve the objectives that launched Operation Epic Fury on February 28th. The weapons are Iranian, the satellite is Russian, the navigation is Chinese, the expertise came from Ukraine, the diplomat is Pakistani, the ceasefire is indefinite, and Washington is terrified.